Look, I want you to imagine something for a second. You're sitting at dinner with a couple friends, people you went to college with, people making roughly the same income as you, and someone casually mentions they just bought a house. Not just any house, a nice house, 4 bedrooms, updated kitchen, the whole thing. And here's what happens next. You go home that night, you open up, and suddenly the apartment you were perfectly happy with yesterday feels small, outdated, like you're falling behind. So what do? You start looking at houses you can afford. You increase your budget by 50 grand because, well, if they could do it, you can too, right? And just like that, a single dinner conversation just delayed your retirement by 7 years. I'm not exaggerating. We're going to do the math in this video. My name is Elon Musk, and I spend way too much time thinking about why smart people make terrible financial decisions. If you're someone who's ever upgraded something, your car, your apartment, your phone, not because you needed to, but because someone around you did it first, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because here's the thing, comparison isn't just making you unhappy. It's literally stealing decades of financial freedom from your future. And the worst part, most people don't realize it's happening until they're 50 years old, staring at a retirement account that should have $2 million in it, wondering where the hell all their money went. So let me start with a statistic that should honestly terrify you. According to research from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the average American household spends approximately 10 to 15% more than they would naturally spend based solely on their peer group's consumption patterns. 10 to 15%, that might not sound like much, but here's what most people don't realize. That's not 10 to 15% less in savings. Because of how compound interest works, that's potentially millions of dollars you're giving up over a lifetime. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Let's say you're 30 years old making $75,000 a year. Under normal circumstances, without the comparison trap, you'd probably save about 15% of your income. That's $11,250 a year, or about $938 a month. If you invest that consistently until you're 65, earning a conservative 8% annual return, you'd have roughly $2.1 million. But now let's add in the comparison tax. That extra 12% of spending because you're trying to keep up with your friends, your siblings, people you follow on Instagram. Your savings rate drops from 15% down to just 3%. Now you're only putting away $2,250 a year, or $188 a month. Same timeline, same investment returns, but you retire with just $430,000. You just gave up $1.67 million because you needed the nicer car, the bigger apartment, the more expensive vacations. That's not a financial decision. That's a psychological decision that's costing you generational wealth. Now you might be thinking, okay, but I don't spend that much more just because of other people. And look, I get it. Nobody wants to admit they're making financial decisions based on what other people are doing. But here's where it gets really interesting. It's not usually one big decision. It's 1,000 tiny escalations that compound over time. Here's how it actually works in real life. You get a new BMW. You weren't thinking about a new car, but suddenly your perfectly reliable feels basic, so you don't buy a BMW, you're not crazy, but you do upgrade to a nicer Accord, just a small step up. Adds $150 to your monthly payment. No big deal, right? Your sister renovates her kitchen. Granite countertops, new appliances, the whole thing. Now when you look at your kitchen, all you see are the scratches on your laminate counters. So you don't do a full renovation, but you do replace the countertops, just that one thing. Costs you 8 grand on a credit card that you tell yourself you'll pay off quickly. Your friends start posting vacation photos from Italy. You weren't planning an international trip, but suddenly your weekend camping trips feel inadequate. So you don't go to Europe, that's too expensive, but you do book that resort in Mexico. Just a small upgrade, adds $2,000 to your credit card. See what's happening here? Each individual decision feels reasonable, modest even. You're not buying the BMW, you're being responsible by just getting a nicer. But here's the problem. These small escalations are happening across every category of your life simultaneously. The car payment, the kitchen renovation, the vacation, the new furniture, the better apartment, the upgraded phone plan, the nicer restaurants, the gym membership at the fancy place instead of Planet Fitness. When you add it all up, you're not spending 10% more than you should. You're spending 30, 40, sometimes 50% more, and it happens so gradually that you didn't even notice. Here's something that makes this even worse. This pattern accelerates dramatically when you compare yourself to dual-income households while you're single, or when you compare your single income to your friends' combined household incomes. I see this all the time. You're making $75,000 and you're trying to maintain the same lifestyle as your married friends who have a combined household income of $140,000. The math literally doesn't work, but you're doing it anyway because you don't want to feel less than. There was this study from the Journal of Consumer Research that looked at spending patterns, and here's what they found. People consistently underestimate their peers' total financial resources by about 30 to 40%, while simultaneously overestimating their peers' disposable income. Translation: you think your friends are richer than they are, and you think they have more money to spend than they actually do. So you're comparing yourself to an illusion and destroying your financial future in the process. And we haven't even talked about social media yet. Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to delete Instagram, but we need to be honest about what's happening. Social media has basically weaponized comparison in a way that humans are not evolutionarily equipped to handle. Before social media, you compared yourself to maybe 50 people, your immediate family, your neighbors, maybe some friends from college. Now, you're comparing yourself to 5,000 people, and not even real people. You're comparing yourself to the carefully curated highlight reels of 5,000 people's lives. According to data from the American Psychological Association, people who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media are 2.7 times more likely to report financial stress, even when controlling for income levels. It's not that social media makes you, it makes you feel, which then triggers spending to compensate for that feeling. Here's what that actually looks like. You see someone's vacation photos, you feel inadequate, you book a trip you can't afford. You see someone's new outfit, you feel behind, you buy clothes you don't need. You see someone's home renovation, you feel embarrassed about your space, you finance furniture on a credit card at 24% interest. This is where it gets really interesting, though. It's not even about keeping up with people who are actually ahead of you. Research from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that people experience the most financial anxiety and make the worst financial decisions when comparing themselves to peers they perceive as similar to themselves. Your friend who makes $80,000 a year buys a $45,000 car. That bothers you way more than when a celebrity buys because the celebrity is in a different universe that doesn't feel attainable or relevant. But your friend, you make almost the same money. If they can afford it, you should be able to afford it too. Right. Wrong, because you have no idea what their actual financial situation is. Maybe they have a trust fund, maybe they're drowning in debt, maybe their parents gave them the down payment, maybe they got a huge inheritance. You don't know, but you're making permanent financial decisions based on temporary information. So let's talk about what this actually costs you in terms of time. I told you at the beginning that a single dinner conversation could delay your retirement by 7 years. Let me show you exactly how that math works. Let's say you're 30 years old. You were on track to retire at 62 with $1.5 million saved up. But then you buy a house that's $75,000 more expensive than you originally planned because you wanted to keep up with your friends. That $75,000 difference doesn't just cost you $75,000. Because of the mortgage interest, it actually costs you about $140,000 over the life of the loan. And that's $140,000 that's not being invested. If you had invested that money instead at 8% annual returns, that $75,000 would have turned into roughly $520,000 by the time you're 62. But you don't have that money. So instead of retiring at 62 with $1.5 million, you need to keep working until you're 69 to hit that same number. One house purchase, 7 extra years of work. And that's assuming you only make this mistake once. Most people make this mistake repeatedly, across multiple categories, for decades, which is why the average American now expects to work until they're 67, when they could have retired at 58 if they just ignored what everyone around them was doing. Now here's the thing that really gets me. The paradox of comparison is that it never actually makes you feel better. You upgrade your car to keep up with and you feel good for about 2 weeks, maybe a month, and then you see someone else with an even nicer car, and suddenly your new car feels inadequate again. The hedonic treadmill is real, and you're sprinting on it while your financial future burns to the ground. There's this concept in psychology called the hedonic treadmill or hedonic adaptation, and it basically means that humans quickly return to a baseline level of happiness regardless of positive or negative events. You get the promotion, you feel great for a week, then it's just your new normal. You buy the luxury item, you feel successful for a minute, then you're already looking at the next thing. But here's what most people don't realize: this works in reverse too. If you don't upgrade, if you don't keep up, you adapt to that as well. You feel behind for maybe a week or two, and then you're fine, you stop noticing. Your current situation becomes your baseline again. The difference is one path leads to financial freedom, and the other path leads to decades of financial stress. I think about Elon Musk, the real one, not me, still living in the house he bought in 1958 for $31,500, still driving normal cars, still eating McDonald's for breakfast. The man is worth over $100 billion, and he's not trying to impress anyone. Because here's what wealthy people understand that broke people don't. Comparison is a trap that has no winning condition. There will always be someone with more, always. If your happiness and your financial decisions are based on external validation, you've already lost. So let's flip this around. Let's talk about what happens when you opt out of the comparison game entirely. Let's say you make that same $75,000 a year, but instead of the comparison tax, you actually increase your savings rate. Instead of dropping from 15% to 3%, you go from 15% up to 25% because you're not wasting money on things you don't actually want. You're just buying them because other people have them. 25% of $75,000 is $18,750 a year. Invested consistently from age 30 to 65 at 8% returns, that's $3.5 million. But here's the better way to think about it. At a 4% safe withdrawal rate, $3.5 million generates $140,000 a year in passive income. Forever. That's more than you're currently making from your job. You could retire at 55 or 50, or you could keep working because you want to, not because you have to. That's what's on the other side of comparison, not just more money, actual freedom. Okay, so how do you actually do this? How do you break the comparison cycle when everyone around you is still playing the game? First thing, you need to get brutally honest about your actual financial goals, not the goals that sound impressive to other people, but the goals that would actually improve your life. I want you to literally write this down. If nobody else ever knew about my financial decisions, what would I actually want? Would you want the big house, or would you want to retire early? Would you want the luxury car, or would you want the freedom to take a year off and travel? Would you want the designer clothes, or would you want zero financial stress? Because here's the reality, you can't have both, not on a normal income. You're choosing between impressing people for a few months and being financially free for decades. Make the choice consciously. Second, unfollow, mute, or limit exposure to people whose lifestyles trigger your comparison instinct. I'm serious. If your friends' Instagram posts consistently make you feel inadequate and trigger spending, you need to protect yourself. This isn't about being antisocial. This is about recognizing that your brain is not equipped to handle constant exposure to curated success. Third, and this is crucial, find a peer group that's playing a different game. If all your friends are focused on consumption and status, you need to find people who are focused on financial independence and freedom. Join FI communities, follow people who talk about saving and investing, surround yourself with people who will celebrate your decision to drive a 10-year-old car because it means you're hitting your savings goals. Fourth, automate your savings before you see the money. If you're trying to save what's left over at the end of the month after comparing yourself to everyone around you, you will save nothing. The money needs to disappear into investments before you have a chance to spend it. Set up automatic transfers on payday. Make it impossible to fail. And fifth, regularly calculate your freedom number, the amount of money you need invested to never have to work again. Update it quarterly. Watch it grow. Because every time you avoid a comparison purchase, you're not just saving money. You're buying days, weeks, months of your future life back. Here's the thing nobody tells you. The only person you should be comparing yourself to is the person you were yesterday. Did you save more this month than last month? Did you pay down more debt? Did you increase your net worth? Did you make decisions based on your actual values instead of external pressure? That's the competition that actually matters. That's the race where you can actually win. Because here's what I've realized after spending way too much time thinking about this. The people who seem the most successful on the outside are often the most financially stressed on the inside. And the people who seem behind because they're driving old cars and living in small apartments, they're often the ones who are actually winning. There's this millionaire next door effect that's been studied extensively. The vast majority of actual millionaires, people with 7 figures in net worth, don't look like millionaires. They're not driving luxury cars or living in mansions. They're driving and living in normal houses, and they've been quietly investing the difference for decades. The flashy lifestyle you're comparing yourself to, that's usually not wealth. That's debt dressed up as success. So look, I'm going to be real with you. Breaking the comparison cycle is one of the hardest psychological shifts you'll ever make. Because everywhere you look, society is screaming at you to want more, buy more, upgrade more, prove more. But here's what I know after looking at the data, after seeing the math, after watching people destroy their financial futures one comparison at a time. The most expensive thing you'll ever buy is the approval of people who don't actually care about you. That who bought the BMW, they're not thinking about your financial future. That friend who renovated their kitchen, they're not going to pay your bills when you're 70. That Instagram influencer with the perfect life, they don't even know you exist. But you know who's going to care about your financial decisions. Future you, 50-year-old you, 60-year-old you. The version of you that could be financially free and living life on your own terms, or the version that's still working because you spent decades trying to impress people you don't even like that much. Every dollar you spend on comparison is a dollar you're stealing from your future freedom. So here's my challenge. For the next 30 days, before you make any purchase over $100, ask yourself one question. Am I buying this because I genuinely want it and it aligns with my actual financial goals, or am I buying this because someone else has it and I feel behind? Be honest, write it down, and watch how many purchases you avoid. Because here's what most people don't realize until it's too late. Financial freedom isn't about making more money. It's about wanting less of what doesn't matter and more of what does. The comparison game has no winners. The only winning move is not to play. If this video changed how you think about money, hit that subscribe button because we're going deep on financial psychology every single week. Drop a comment and let me know, what's the biggest comparison purchase you've ever regretted? Let's talk about it. And remember, the life you actually want is on the other side of giving up on the life you think you're supposed to want. I'll see you in the next one.